This podcast is intended to help you fall asleep. Do not listen to it while driving. It's best to listen while lying in bed, as comfortable as you can get, and without the likelihood of being interrupted until it's time to wake up. I'm Rick Whitaker, and this is Literate Sleep, where I read from literary texts that I hope you will enjoy hearing without being concerned about their endings. Tonight's reading is devoted to the American poet Maya Angelou. First, I'll read a selection of her poems, then an interview she gave in 2013. Now I invite you to close your eyes, calm yourself down, relax completely, and let yourself be taken away while I read to you for a peaceful night of rejuvenating, healthy, deep sleep. After reading the interview, I'll read a biographical note about Dr. Angelou, but I expect you'll be sound asleep by then. Literate sleep. Poems by Maya Angelou. Awaking in New York. Curtains forcing their will against the wind. Children sleep, exchanging dreams with seraphim. The city drags itself awake on subway straps, and I, an alarm, awake as a rumor of war, lie stretching into dawn, unasked and unheeded. Caged bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. California Prodigal. The eye follows, the land slips upward, creases down, forms the gentle buttocks of a young giant. In the nestle, old adobe bricks, washed of whiteness, paled to umber, await another century. Star jasmine and old vines lay claim upon the ghosted land, then quiet pools whisper private childhood secrets. Flush on inner cottage walls, antiquitous faces, used to the gelid breath of old manners, glare disdainfully over breached time. Around and through these cold phantasmantalities, he walks, insisting to the languid air, activity, music, a generosity of graces. His lupin fields spurn old deceit, and agile poppies dance in golden riot. Each day is fulminant, exploding brightly under the gaze of his exquisite sires, frozen in the famed paint of dead masters. Audacious sunlight casts defiance at their feet. Kin. We were entwined in red rings of blood and loneliness before the first snows fell, before muddy rivers seeded clouds above a virgin forest, and men ran naked, blue and black-skinned, into the warm embraces of Sheba, Eve, and Lilith. I was your sister. You left me to force strangers into brother molds, exacting taxations they never owed or could ever pay. You fought to die, thinking in destruction lies the seed of birth. You may be right. I will remember silent walks in southern woods and long talks and low voices, shielding meaning from the big ears of over-curious adults. You may be right. Your slow return from regions of terror and bloody screams races my heart. I hear again the laughter of children and see fireflies bursting tiny explosions in an Arkansas twilight. The mothering blackness. She came home running back to the mothering blackness, deep in the smothering blackness, white tears, icicle gold, plains of her face. She came home running. She came down creeping here to the black arms waiting, now to the warm heart waiting, rhyme of alien dreams befrosts her rich brown face. She came down creeping. She came home blameless, black yet as Hagar's daughter, tall as was Sheba's daughter. Threats of northern winds die on the desert's face. She came home blameless. On the pulse of morning. A rock, a river, a tree, hosts to species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur, who left dried tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today the rock cries out to us clearly, forcefully, "Come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here. You, created only a little lower than the angels, have crouched too long in the bruising darkness, have lain too long face down in ignorance, your mouths spilling words armed for slaughter. The rock cries out to us today, you may stand upon me, but do not hide your face." Phenomenal woman. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model's size, but when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. A plagued journey. There is no warning rattle at the door, nor heavy feet to stomp the foyer boards. Safe in the dark prison, I know that light slides over the fingered work of a toothless woman in Pakistan. Happy prints of an invisible time are illumined. My mouth agape rejects the solid air and lungs hold. The invader takes direction and seeps through the plaster walls. It is at my chamber, entering the keyhole, pushing through the padding of the door. I cannot scream. A bone of fear clogs my throat. It is upon me. It is sunrise with hope, its arrogant rider. My mind, formerly quiescent in its snug encasement, is strained to look upon their rapturous visages, to let them enter even into me. I am forced outside myself to mount the light and ride joined with hope. Through all the bright hours I cling to expectation until darkness comes to reclaim me as its own. Hope fades, day is gone into its irredeemable place, and I am thrown back into the familiar bonds of disconsolation. Gloom crawls around, lapping lasciviously between my toes, at my ankles, and it sucks the strands of my hair. It forgives my heady fling with hope. I am joined again into its greedy arms. Still I rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Life's Work, an interview with Maya Angelou by Allison Beard for the Harvard Business Review. Your latest book is about your mother. What did you learn from her? To develop courage, and she taught me by being courageous herself. I realized that one isn't born with courage. One develops it by doing small, courageous things, in the way that if one sets out to pick up a 100-pound bag of rice, one would be advised to start with a 5-pound bag, then 10 pounds, then 20 pounds, and so forth, until one builds up enough muscle to lift the 100-pound bag. It's the same way with courage. You do small, courageous things that require some mental and spiritual exertion. Both she and your grandmother ran businesses. What did they teach you about good management? That it's wise to be fair, and it's unwise to lie. That doesn't mean tell everything you know. Just make sure that what you do say is the truth. There are people who say I'm brutally frank, but one doesn't have to be brutal. One can tell the truth in such a way that the listener really welcomes it. That sounds a lot like constructive criticism. Which critics do you listen to? I've reached an age where many of the critics I respect have gone on to the next transition, but I've learned to listen to young people, my students at Wake Forest, or ones I encounter around the world. I'm reaffirmed more often than not. That is to say, I don't learn something new from them, but I do find that what I've found to be true is still true. Harvard Business Review readers hear a lot about the importance of storytelling in business. For brands, for leaders, how does one craft a compelling story? There's a statement by the Roman dramatist Terence, I am a human being, nothing human can be alien to me. If you know that, accept that, then you can tell a story. You can make people believe characters are just like they are. Jack and Jill went up the hill. One fell down and the other came tumbling after. The listener thinks, oh, I've fallen down, so I can understand, even if it happened in Holland or Kowloon. Human beings should understand how other humans feel, no matter where they are, no matter what their language or culture is, no matter their age, and no matter the age in which they live. If you develop the art of seeing us as more alike than we are unalike, then all stories are understandable. You've lived all around the world and have a diverse fan base. Aside from storytelling, what's the best key to bridging social divides? Maybe because we live in such a large country, Americans find other languages difficult. I remember touring in the company of Porgy and Bess with some singers who could perform beautiful arias, but couldn't hold a conversation in French or Italian. You need to think, here are human beings speaking a language I don't understand, so let me get some handle on it. How are you? Fine, thanks. And you? I'm cold. I'm hungry. Where will I find a nice hotel? Where would I get some gas for my car? They're saying the same things, whether it's in Zagreb or Little Rock. I don't buy the man-made differences between human beings. If human beings are there, I'm at home. I don't know what I'd do with zebras or cockroaches or elephants. Actually, I do know what I'd do with an elephant. I'd ride it. But if I'm in human company, whatever the culture is, I respect it, and I would like to see my own respected. Of all the professions you've taken on, which has been the most challenging? Writing poetry. When I come close to saying what I want to, I'm over the moon. Even if it's just 6 lines, I pull out the champagne. But until then, my goodness, those lines worry me like a mosquito in the ear. When you were working at those early jobs, did you ever envision what you would become? No, but I didn't think I wouldn't. I somehow got the feeling early on that if human beings did a thing, I could study it and try to do some of it too. And one thing led to another. If I had not studied Latin in school, I wouldn't have found it easy to comprehend the structure of language. Had I not danced, I might never really have listened to music and known I could compose something. You see, I understood early that not everything I did was going to be a masterpiece, but I would try to do it the best I knew how. I've listened to an inner voice and had enough courage to try unknown things, and I think everything in its time. Tell me about your writing process. When and where do you best work? Although I live in a huge house, I keep a hotel room and go there at about 6:30 in the morning. I have a thesaurus, a dictionary, a Bible, a yellow pad, and pens, and I go to work. I encourage housekeeping not to go in, since I leave at about 1 in the afternoon and never use the bed. After a couple of months, the management will slip a note under my door saying, "Please, Dr. Angelou, let us change the bed. We think the sheets may be moldy." And I leave a note saying it's all right. When I go in there, I feel I'm going to my own place. It's waiting for me, and I step away from the world somehow. How do you deal with writer's block? I don't call it a block. I'm careful about the words I use because I know that my brain will remember and tell them back to me. There are times when I sit on the hotel bed with a deck of cards and play solitaire to give my little mind something to do. I got that phrase from my grandmother, who used to say when something surprised her, "You know, that wasn't even on my littlest mind." I really thought that there was a small mind and a large mind, and if I could occupy the small one, I could get more quickly to the big one. So I play solitaire. I've used up a deck of bicycle cards, good cards, in a week and a half. Sometimes after that, I've got 2 pages worth looking at. Sometimes I've got 20. You started writing late in life, but you've been prolific. What's the secret to staying so productive, and where do you get your energy? Well, Miss Beard, energy is what we all are. It's in this wire connecting me to you. It's all over the place. And I love what I'm doing, so I don't mind working. I don't mind the struggle. I owe it to the muse, to the creator. And when the work comes out just right, my goodness, it's such a blessing. As someone who's known Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, what do you think makes a leader great? A leader sees greatness in other people. You can't be much of a leader if all you see is yourself. Only equals make friends. A man or woman who sees other people as whole and prepared and accords them respect and the same rights has arranged his or her own allies. Speaking of Obama, how would you rate the progress of minorities in professional fields, in politics, business, academia? Well, we're about to celebrate his 2nd inauguration, and not that many white presidents have had a 2nd term, so I think our country is healthier than we think. The people with the most raucous voices are heard, but the people who count are those who fill the ballot box. Who have been your most important professional mentors? I had a teacher in high school in San Francisco, Mrs. Kerwin. She was a woman of about 50, I'd say, and she wore a corsage and silk dresses. She paced up and down the aisles, and she called every student by his or her last name. She taught me how to teach. She loved to show what she knew and share it. And I teach my university classes very much as Miss Kerwin taught. She rarely asked anything that was listed or published in the civics books. She would say, "There was an article in last week's Time magazine dealing with strip mining in Virginia. Speak to that, Beard. Speak to that, Johnson." You could never raise your hand in class. If you did, she wouldn't call on you. She impressed me greatly. After I joined Porgy and Bess, there were articles in the San Francisco papers. You know, hometown girl makes good. And I went out to the school to see her. I waited until the class let out and walked into the room, and Miss Kerwin was at her desk, and she looked up and she said, "Yes?" I said, "Good morning, Miss Kerwin. You don't remember me, but I was a student of yours." She said, "Yes, you're Johnson. You sat right there." And she pointed to the desk. She had an enormous impact on me. Who have you mentored? Some are famous and some are not. I mentor you. Everything I have learned, everything I've done, is at the ready when I talk to you, and in a way, you will never forget me. Believe me, I won't. What I mean is, you may forget how and where you got it, but in a few weeks, a few months, years from now, you will say something and think, "Oh, I'm glad that came to me." You were a single working mom raising your son, Guy. What advice would you give other people in similar situations? Realize your priorities. It would seem the priority is to keep a job so you can pay the bills, but the priority is to let the child know he or she is loved. About a decade ago, you entered into a partnership with Hallmark. What were the challenges or surprises you faced in that venture? Well, I was amazed that some people thought that I'd let the side down. I'm told a poet who should have known better said to a journalist, "I'm just sorry that Ms. Angelou has reduced her art to greeting cards." That week I was in a bookstore in Miami, and a woman came up to me. She was about my age. The difference between us was she was white and I'm black. And she said, "You look just like Maya Angelou." And I said, "I am." She said, "Oh, my dear, my daughter and I have been estranged for 4 years, but this past Christmas she sent me one of your Hallmark cards, which said, 'Mother Love Liberates.' I put that card on my nightstand at night when I go to bed. In the morning I take it into the kitchen and put it on the counter when I make coffee. I take it to the living room when I'm sitting there reading. I thank you very much." A person who might never read a book of poetry reads a card and is secured, made safe on some level in her life. It may get better than that, but I doubt it. The company has been wonderful to work with. The challenge is to say something well in a few words. I wrote one card that said, "Whining not only makes you ugly, it lets a brute know that a victim is in the neighborhood." I'm so proud of that. Which accolades matter most to you and why? I like for people to say I'm kind. It means that I'm still learning and that I'm able to forgive. An acclaimed American poet, storyteller, activist, and autobiographer, Maya Angelou was born Margarita Johnson in St. Louis, Missouri. Angelou had a broad career as a singer, dancer, actress, composer, and Hollywood's first female black director, but became most famous as a writer, editor, essayist, playwright, and poet. As a civil rights activist, Angelou worked for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. She was also an educator and served as the Reynolds Professor of American Studies at Wake Forest University. By 1975, wrote Carol E. Neubauer and Southern Women Writers, The New Generation, Angelou was recognized as a spokesperson for all people who are committed to raising the moral standards of living in the United States. She served on 2 presidential committees, for Gerald Ford in 1975 and for Jimmy Carter in 1977. In 2000, Angelou was awarded the National Medal of Arts by President Bill Clinton. In 2010, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the U.S., by President Barack Obama. Angelou was awarded over 50 honorary degrees before her death. Angelou's most famous work, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, 1969, deals with her early years in Long Beach, St. Louis, and Stamps, Arkansas, where she lived with her brother and paternal grandmother. In one of its most evocative and controversial moments, Angelou describes how she was first cuddled, then raped by her mother's boyfriend when she was just 7 years old. When the man was murdered by her uncles for his crime, Angelou felt responsible and stopped talking. Angelou remained mute for 5 years, but developed a love for language. She read Black authors like Langston Hughes, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Paul Laurence Dunbar, as well as canonical works by William Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, and Edgar Allan Poe. When Angelou was 12 and a half, Mrs. Flowers, an educated African-American woman, finally got her to speak again. Mrs. Flowers, as Angelou recalled in her children's book, Mrs. Flowers, A Moment of Friendship, 1986, emphasized the importance of the spoken word, explained the nature of and importance of education, and instilled in her a love of poetry. Angelou graduated at the top of her 8th grade class. Angelou attended George Washington High School in San Francisco and took lessons in dance and drama on a scholarship at the California Labor School. When Angelou, just 17, graduated from high school and gave birth to a son, Guy, she began to work as the first African American and first female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. As she explained in Singin' and Swingin' and Gettin' Merry Like Christmas, 1976, the third of her autobiographies, she also worked as a shake dancer in nightclubs, fry cook in hamburger joints, dinner cook in a Creole restaurant, and once had a job in a mechanic's shop, taking the paint off cars with my hands. Angelou married a white ex-sailor, Tosh Angelos, in 1950. After they separated, Angelou continued her study of dance in New York City, returning to San Francisco to sing in the Purple Onion Cabaret and garnering the attention of talent scouts. From 1954 to 1955, she was a member of the cast of a touring production of Porgy and Bess. During the late 1950s, Angelou sang in West Coast and Hawaiian nightclubs before returning to New York to continue her stage career. Angelou joined the Harlem Writers Guild in the late 1950s and met James Baldwin and other important writers. It was during this time that Angelou had the opportunity to hear Dr. Martin Luther King speak. Inspired by his message, she decided to become a part of the struggle for civil rights. She was offered a position as the Northern Coordinator for Dr. King's SCLC. Following her work for Dr. King, Angelou moved to Cairo with her son and in 1962 to Ghana in West Africa. She worked as a freelance writer and was a feature editor at the African Review. When Angelou returned to the United States in the mid-1960s, she was encouraged by author James Baldwin. Initially, Angelou declined the offers, but eventually changed her mind and wrote I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. The book chronicles Angelou's childhood and ends with the birth of her son. It won immediate success and was nominated for a National Book Award. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is the first of Angelou's 6 autobiographies. It is widely taught in schools, though it has faced controversy over its portrayal of race, sexual abuse, and violence. Angelou's use of fiction writing techniques like dialogue and plot in her autobiographies was innovative for its time and helped in part to complicate the genre's relationship with truth and memory. Though her books are episodic and tightly crafted, the events seldom follow a strict chronology and are arranged to emphasize themes. Other volumes include Gather Together in My Name, 1974, which begins when Angelou is 17 and a new mother. Singin' and Swingin' and Gettin' Merry Like Christmas, an account of her tour in Europe and Africa with Porgy and Bess. The Heart of a Woman, 1981, a description of Angelou's acting and writing career in New York and her work for the civil rights movement. And All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes, 1986, which recounts Angelou's travels in West Africa and her decision to return without her son to America. It took Angelou 15 years to write the final volume of her autobiography, A Song Flung Up to Heaven, 2002. The book covers 4 years from the time Angelou returned from Ghana in 1964 through the moment when she sat down at her mother's table and began to write I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings in 1968. Angelou hesitated so long to start the book and took so long to finish it, she told Knight Ridder Tribune News Service interviewer Cheryl Connolly, because so many painful things happened to her and to the entire African-American community in those 4 years. I didn't know how to write it, she said. I didn't see how the assassination of Malcolm, the Watts riot, the breakup of a love affair, then assassination of Martin King, how I could get all that loose with something uplifting in it. A Song Flung Up to Heaven deals forthrightly with these events, and, quote, the poignant beauty of Angelou's writing enhances rather than masks the candor with which she addresses the racial crisis through which America was passing, Wayne A. Holst wrote in Christian Century. Angelou was also a prolific and widely read poet, and her poetry has often been lauded for more of its depictions of black beauty, the strength of women, and the human spirit, criticizing the Vietnam War, demanding social justice for all, than for its poetic virtue. Yet Just Give Me a Cool Drink of Water 'Fore I Die, which was published in 1971, was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 1972. According to Carol Neubauer and Southern Women Writers, the first 20 poems describe the whole gamut of love, from the first moment of passionate discovery to the first suspicion of painful loss. In other poems, Angelou turns her attention to the lives of black people in America from the time of slavery to the rebellious 1960s. Her themes deal broadly with the painful anguish suffered by blacks forced into submission, with guilt over accepting too much, and with protest and basic survival. As Angelou wrote her autobiographies and poems, she continued her career in film and television. She was the first black woman to have a screenplay, Georgia, Georgia, produced in 1972. She was honored with a nomination for an Emmy Award for her performance in Roots in 1977. In 1979, Angelou helped adapt her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, for a television movie of the same name. Angelou wrote the poetry for the 1993 film Poetic Justice and played the role of Aunt June. She also played Lelia May in the 1993 television film There Are No Children Here, and appeared as Anna in the feature film How to Make an American Quilt in 1995. One source of Angelou's fame in the early 1990s was President Bill Clinton's invitation to write and read an inaugural poem. Americans all across the country watched as she read On the Pulse of Morning, which begins, a rock, a river, a tree, and calls for peace, racial and religious harmony, and social justice for people of different origins, incomes, genders, and sexual orientations. It recalls the civil rights movement and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech as it urges America to give birth again to the dream of equality. Angelou challenged the new administration and all Americans to work together for progress. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. During the early 1990s, Angelou wrote several books for children, including Life Doesn't Frighten Me, 1993, which also featured the works of Jean-Michel Basquiat, My Painted House, My Friendly Chicken and Me, 1994, and Kofi and His Magic, 1996, both collaborations with the photographer Margaret Courtney Clark. Angelou's poetry collections include the complete collected poems of Maya Angelou, 1994, and Phenomenal Woman, 1995, a collection of 4 poems that takes its title from a poem which originally appeared in Cosmopolitan magazine in 1978. The poem's narrator describes the physical and spiritual characteristics and qualities that make her attractive. Angelou also wrote occasional poems, including A Brave Startling Truth, 1995, which commemorated the founding of the United Nations, and Amazing Peace, 2005, a poem written for the White House Christmas tree lighting ceremony. Angelou published multiple collections of essays. Wouldn't Take Nothing for My Journey Now, 1993, contains declarations, complaints, memories, opinions, and advice on subjects ranging from faith to jealousy. Genevieve Studiford, writing in Publishers Weekly, described the essays as quietly inspirational pieces. Anne Whitehouse of the New York Times Book Review observed that the book would appeal to readers in search of clear messages with easily digested meanings. Even the Stars Look Lonesome, 1997, is the sister volume, a book of candid and lovingly crafted homilies to sensuality, beauty, and black women, said Donna Seaman in Booklist. Letter to My Daughter was published in 2008. Angelou's poetry often benefited from her performance of it, and during her lifetime, Angelou recited her poems before spellbound crowds. Indeed, Angelou's poetry can also be traced to African American oral traditions like slave and work songs, especially in her use of personal narrative and emphasis on individual responses to hardship, oppression, and loss. In addition to examining individual experience, Angelou's poems often respond to matters like race and sex on a larger social and psychological scale. Describing her work to George Plimpton, Angelou said, "Once I got into it, I realized I was following a tradition established by Frederick Douglass, the slave narrative, speaking in the first person singular, talking about the first person plural, always saying I, meaning we, and what a responsibility. Trying to work with that form, the autobiographical mode, to change it, to make it bigger, richer, finer, and more inclusive in the 20th century has been a great challenge for me." In 2013, she was the recipient of the Literarian Award, an honorary National Book Award for contributions to the literary community. She died in 2014 at the age of 86.